Hello, this is Gretchen, the Verdant Crafter. Today I'm introducing my Thanksgiving card series for 2017. My hope is to create several videos where I make at least 10 cards which are sort of mass produced to give for Thanksgiving. My secret hope, which I've told a few people but not generally announced, is to make cards for each of my students. I have under 100, but I believe if I make 100 then I'll have enough to give all of my students and staff members at my school Thanksgiving cards. So I made a whole bunch in this case. I have some Inkadinkado paper that I cut in half, and then I used my die cutting machine to cut out a leaf. For several of these, I used the Hero Arts Autumn Icons Fancy dies, and for several of them, I used the My Favorite Things Dynamics Falling Leaves dies. I also have, and totally forgot that I had them, the Hero Arts Autumn stamp set and the dies that go with it. The ones that I was actually hoping to use was the Hero Arts Color Layering Grateful Leaves dies, but I don't have them. I just have the stamp set. I love that stamp set. It was actually my first, I'm going to call it true stamp set, high quality stamp set. So I definitely come back to it a lot. Here I'm using some Post-it tape on the edge. That's the bright green stuff. And I'm using bright green because literally that's what I have. It's very important that you use what you have. You don't need very fancy tools to do a lot of these things. While fancy tools can help, a lot of the times things like Post-its and just regular paper towels work. I am using Distress inks for most of these, and this first card I'm using the Distress ink blenders from Tim Holtz. These are the round foam blenders, but I found that in such a small area, I had a really hard time controlling where the colors went. So after this, I switched to finger daubers. It was my first time using finger daubers. And some of the ink blending brushes, I just got the Clarity brushes, and I have had the Nuvo brushes for a while. I used them together. I'm very carefully peeling up my mask. I did rip it, but I'm going to use it a whole bunch more times before I throw it away. And this is our first card. We're moving on to card number 2. For actually all of these cards, I stuck with fall autumn leaf colors. I wanted more realistic leaves. I thought more realistic meant darker, but I find that I was really drawn to the brighter color leaves that I did. This leaf is an oak leaf, and it is the Falling Leaves die from My Favorite Things. In the center, I have some Rusty Hinge. And right now I'm adding some of my favorite yellow, which happens to be Wild Honey. I am going to eventually add, I think, some Candied Apple or Barn Door, some Aged Mahogany, and I might add some Carved Pumpkin or Spiced Marmalade. And I might add some, I think it's peeled paint, but it might be Forest Moss. Some of the other colors I used were Antique Linen. I did use some Walnut Stain and Ground Espresso to get some very dark stems. I also used some peeled paint, some Forest Moss, and I believe Shabby Shutters for some, oh my goodness, this is embarrassing. What are they called? Ginkgo leaves. So here is my card, and you can see that on the very edge I did get some ink. So I'm going to use a Tombow sand eraser to remove it. Here I've just taped off all of the edges to make sure that I don't get ink anywhere I don't want it. And I'm using one of the brushes and some Wild Honey. Now I'm switching to a Clarity brush, and the reason I'm switching to a Clarity brush is I really want that red color. I believe it's Barn Door, but it might be Candied Apple, just in the very middle. I don't want it on the very edge. That's one of the reasons that I think that I might like the Clarity brushes better, because there are different size tools. You can really control better where the color is. Here I'm using my sponge dauber, and I'm using some Aged Mahogany to get just the center and the stem a little darker. Now I believe I'm switching to Carved Pumpkin to get some orange in there. This is really going to brighten up that red. It's going to add some depth. The only thing with this is you really do need to be very careful of your mask if you're reusing it, because you are going to end up picking up the edges. I made tons of these cards and I thought I was going to have to throw away 3 or 4 of them because I did get ink under the edges, but I was able to either use my Tombow sand eraser or put some embellishments over it so it's not too noticeable. These were very simple cards to make. I made them in an afternoon. Anyway, I did all of the ink blending in an afternoon, and then I came back the next day and did the heat embossing of the sentiments and added the embellishments. These are very simple. I'm sure if I'm giving these to my students, most of them are going to go in the trash can. So while I do want them to be individual and special for them, I don't want it to be something that I'm going to be upset about if it goes in the trash can. Here, I'm really getting my base color down, especially on the very edges with the yellow, with my sponge dauber, and I'm using the clarity brush in the center to get sort of more of a delicate layering of color. I also think it would be really fun to do this with snowflakes for winter cards. The only thing is, of course, snowflakes can be very delicate, so you're going to have to be really careful when you remove the mask if you want to reuse it. I'm not showing you every card that I ink blended because that would be a lot, but I am showing you some, especially when I did something different. Here I'm trying to pull the color in for the most part, especially where the mask is a little bit more delicate, where it's coming in for the, the reverse points of the leaves. For these, I am blending right on my card base. I have some 110 Solar White Neenah Classic Crust cardstock. I cut it in half the long way at 4 1/4 inches, and then I scored it at 5 1/2 inches. While this is not the perfect paper for blending, I was really looking to just get my color on there and keep it pretty rich. I wasn't going to do anything fancy with water, so I was very happy to be able to use this cardstock. Certainly if you're looking for a smoother blend, if you have trouble blending, if you're looking to do any sort of play with water, you're probably going to want to use something different, but this works for very simple use. Okay, now we are onto another card. Here I'm again using my Wild Honey, and I think this is one of my favorites just because it is a very rich color. In the end, I made 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 cards. My goal was to make 10 cards. I had about 3 to 5 cards that I thought I was going to need to throw away. So I was very happy to have made 20 cards. They were very fun. It was very relaxing. So I'm not really showing you making a lot of the cards because they're pretty self-explanatory. But for sentiments, I used the Hero Arts Grateful Leaves, color layering Grateful Leaves stamp set. I used the Simon Says Stamp Autumn Greeting stamp set. I used the Thankful for You and I stamped that right over the leaf. I used Happy Thanksgiving. I used there's Happy Thanksgiving in small script and then in more scripty words. Here on screen, I'm working on one card. I only made one of these cards, and I'm hoping to make some more because I do have some more of these inside of the die cuts, but I only made one for this time. I'm using Distress Oxide Candied Apple, and I'm using a clarity brush to just lay that down. In the very center, I put down my mask, and I'm blending out all of this Distress Oxide color. I'm going to come in on the very bottom right-hand corner with Fired Brick, and I believe I'm going to add some Spiced Marmalade to the top left corner. In this case, I'm just using regular Distress ink, not Distress Oxide, because that was right on my desk. And I like how it blended. It worked really well. Oh, I think that was spiced marmalade. Or maybe it was carved pumpkin. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. And here I'm coming in with this color. I hadn't originally planned to sort of do this ombre-ish stuff, so that's why it's coming in after. I didn't plan it, but I do like how it looks. It was very nice. I am going to layer up more of this candied apple because I do want it to be a richer, deeper background. It probably would have been smarter to use an ink blending tool instead of the brush to get a deeper background, but oh well. Here I'm just drying it with my heat tool. I'm going to come in with my distress sprayer. I'm going to spray some water, lift it off, dry it, and then peel off my mask. I also used for sentiments from the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero September 2017 card kit, Autumn Greetings. And I believe that I used a sentiment from Simon Says Stamp, Thankful Heart Sentiment. This was last year's November card kit stamp set. Here is one of my other, I'm going to call it the reverse mask. So it was the inside of the mask that was cut out. I am using some very light distress ink. I believe this is tumbled glass, and I'm going around it very lightly. Here I'm peeling off my mask, and you can see that it's there. It's very delicate. I did that again with antique linen, and it's a little grainy because the ink from the mask did come up, but it looks nice. Here I'm stamping Autumn Blessings from the, oh my goodness, Simon Says Stamp Autumn Greetings, and I'm using exclusively on all of these cards the Simon Says Stamp Antique Gold Embossing Powder. It was simply fantastic. And I'm just hitting the back of my card to get rid of any warping. For these cards, and here I'm showing you all of the cards, they were fairly simple. I did like to stamp the greeting over the leaf. It's all sort of centered. Some of these were kept super simple. This one I added that Happy Thanksgiving strip, which was from the Autumn Greetings, to cover up some of the mess up that I couldn't get rid of. Here I tried to do some of, Jennifer McGuire has showed it, you ink up your die before you send it through the with an embossing powder, embossing plate with embossing, and then you do embossing powder to get it. It didn't work well, so I only did it once and I didn't show you. For sequins, I used some Lucy's Cards Autumn Sparkles sequins. I also used some Simon Says Stamp Sparkle and Shine sequins. I really like the gold on these. It's a little bit, I'm going to call it more brassy, less in your face. I love this card, Thankful for You. And here's some of those ginkgo leaves. I just love ginkgo leaves. They were one of my favorite plants in college when I was studying botany, and they definitely still are. And for those, I believe I used some bronze Pretty Posh sequins. I just love that sentiment. Here are two pumpkins that I made. I didn't show myself doing the ink blending. They are from the Autumn Icons Fancy Dies from Hero Arts. And here was that big card that I made. For gems, I used Studio Katya Sparkling Crystal Mixed sequins. Well, not sequins, crystals. Here you go. You can see that even though it is antique linen, it's a little bit green because of the tumbled glass that I ink blended first. And in the center of those sequins, I did put a little drop of Rangers, oh, I can't remember what it's called. It's got sequins in it, or not sequins, it's got glitter in it. I thought it just added a little bit more dimension and a little bit more interest. I also thought it would help the sequins stick down a little bit more. I am, for attaching them, using multimedia matte, which works really well. But again, these are going to students who may or may not treat these however they want to treat them. Thank you for watching. I hope that you were inspired. I think this is a great technique that you could use to make Thanksgiving cards, Christmas cards, Easter cards, any sort of cards that you want with a very simple mask. It would be so much fun to play with all kinds of different colors. I look forward to working with you again in the future. I have another video that will come out probably tomorrow, making a whole bunch more Thanksgiving cards, this time with some watercolor. Oops, there's my little sneak peek by accident. I hope that you have a great day. Thanks. Bye.